The Earth's leaders sat in a dimly lit room, staring at the cold, empty screen. They had sent their final message days ago, and the silence was deafening. With each passing minute, their hope faded further. The galaxy had turned its back on humanity, and now only destruction awaited them. The alien invaders were closing in, their fleets vast and unstoppable. Earth had no allies left, and the rest of the galaxy had abandoned them. The people of Earth had nowhere to turn, and the leaders were beginning to accept that the end was inevitable. For centuries, Earth had been an insignificant planet in the eyes of galactic powers. Despite humanity's progress and resilience, no one had ever truly cared about them. The Council had labeled them weak, primitive, and expendable. Now, with their fate sealed, the leaders sat in silence, wondering if they had made a mistake, if they had been wrong to believe that anyone would ever come to their aid. The message was clear: Earth was alone, and there was no hope. Then, just as despair began to settle in, a signal broke through the silence. It was faint at first, like a whisper on the wind. At first, the leaders thought it was just another glitch in their equipment, something meaningless in the face of their impending doom. But then, the signal grew stronger. It was coming from deep within the galaxy, far beyond any known territory. A message encoded in an ancient language flashed across the screen. The words were strange and unfamiliar, but the tone of the transmission was unmistakable. It was a response. The room went still. The leaders exchanged confused glances. How could this be? Who could this be? They had expected nothing, but now something. Someone was reaching out. As the message played again, the encoded symbols began to unravel, slowly revealing the meaning hidden beneath. The translation was rough, but it was enough to understand. We have heard your call. For a moment, the leaders just stared at the screen in disbelief. Their minds raced, trying to comprehend the meaning of the message. Who could be responding to their plea? Could this be some kind of joke? Or worse, a trap set by their enemies to crush them even further? But the message didn't feel like a trap. It felt different. The words carried weight, a sense of ancient power that didn't seem like something any of the known alien races would send. The translation continued. We are the Xenith. We answer those in need. But beware, we do not offer mercy lightly. Prepare yourself, for what is to come will change everything. The Xenith. The name sent a chill through the room. They were not a name spoken lightly. The Xenith were legends, beings of unimaginable power and fear. Throughout the galaxy, their name was synonymous with destruction, their presence enough to make entire star systems tremble. It was said that the Xenith had once ruled the stars, but they had vanished from the galaxy long ago, retreating into the shadows of space. No one had seen or heard from them in centuries, and yet here they were, responding to Earth's desperate plea. For the first time in days, the leaders allowed themselves a brief moment of hope, but that hope was quickly clouded by fear. What did it mean that the Xenith had heard them? Why had they decided to respond now? The warning in their message was clear. The Xenith did not offer mercy lightly. Whatever help they were offering, there would be a price. The leaders scrambled to decode the rest of the message, but it was clear they would need to prepare for something far beyond anything they had ever imagined. The Xenith had responded, but they were not coming to save Earth out of kindness. They were coming because they saw something in humanity that no one else did. What that was, no one could yet understand. But one thing was certain: humanity's future was no longer in their hands alone. As the transmission ended, the room fell into a heavy silence once again. The leaders knew they had to act quickly. Time was running out, and the alien invaders were closing in fast. The Xenith had promised to come, but they hadn't said when. Would they arrive in time to save Earth, or had humanity already waited too long? In the weeks that followed, humanity worked tirelessly to prepare for the Xenith's arrival. No one knew what to expect, but the fear and excitement were palpable. Earth's military, once focused on defense against the alien invaders, now shifted its focus to preparing for the unknown. Ships were built, weapons were enhanced, and every resource was put into ensuring that humanity would be ready when the Xenith arrived. The Xenith did not communicate further. Their silence was unnerving, leaving humanity on edge, waiting for their arrival. The tension was unbearable. Would they arrive in time to stop the invaders? Would they be merciful, or would they destroy humanity, seeing them as little more than insects? The questions mounted, and the anxiety grew with each passing day. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the Xenith ships appeared. It wasn't like anything anyone had ever seen before. The ships were not just machines, but living, breathing entities. They glowed with an eerie, otherworldly light, their forms shifting and twisting in ways that defied logic. The ships moved with a grace that seemed almost impossible, navigating through space as if they were part of it, rather than simply traveling through it. The first ship to appear was enormous, far larger than any ship humanity had ever built. It hovered just outside the Earth's orbit, its presence causing a wave of fear to ripple through the planet. As the Xenith ships began to take their positions around Earth, it was clear that they were here to stay. Their power was undeniable, and no one dared to challenge them. As the Xenith fleet arrived, humanity watched in awe and fear. What did they want? What were they going to do? The future of Earth was in the hands of these ancient, powerful beings, and the only thing humanity could do was wait. But one thing was certain. The Xenith had answered their call. And whatever came next, Earth's fate was about to change forever. The Xenith ships hovered in the sky, their immense presence casting long, eerie shadows over Earth. It was as though time itself had stopped. The world watched in complete silence, unsure of what would happen next. In the days following the arrival of the Xenith fleet, a strange calm settled over Earth. People didn't know if they were being saved or doomed. The Xenith had answered their plea, but their motives were unclear. Was this an act of mercy or something far more sinister? Governments scrambled to make sense of the situation, but the Xenith didn't communicate directly. Their ships seemed to be studying Earth, observing everything from orbit. There was no immediate contact, no instructions on what humanity should do. It felt like the calm before a storm, uncertain, tense, and unsettling. Despite the lack of communication, Earth's leaders were on high alert. The military stood ready, their weapons prepared, their ships positioned to defend the planet should the Xenith decide to make a move. The question that weighed on everyone's mind was simple. What did the Xenith want? Why had they arrived now? Days turned into weeks, and still, the Xenith made no move. People began to grow anxious. Whispers spread, some speculating that the Xenith had come to finish what the invaders had started. Others wondered if they were simply here to observe, perhaps to judge humanity for its past mistakes. No one knew for certain, but the longer the Xenith remained, the more the fear and anxiety spread. And then, one day, it happened. A single Xenith ship descended from orbit, its dark silhouette cutting through the sky like a harbinger of doom. It landed in the heart of what had once been a bustling metropolis. The area was cleared in advance, but people watched from their windows, holding their breath, waiting for the unknown. The ship's landing made no sound, no rumble, just an eerie, almost supernatural quiet. From within the ship, a figure emerged. It was not what anyone expected. The being that stepped out was tall, its form shifting and shimmering, as if it were made of light and shadow. Its eyes glowed with a deep, unsettling energy, and its presence radiated an almost divine authority. It stood silently for a moment, observing the world around it, before slowly turning to face the gathering crowd. The leader of Earth's government was the first to speak. He stepped forward, his voice shaky but resolute. "We are ready to listen. What do you want from us?" The Xenith's eyes fixed on him, and for a brief moment, it seemed as though time had frozen. The air grew thick with tension, and the onlookers held their breath. Then the Xenith spoke, its voice deep, almost reverberating through the ground. "We have come to answer your plea, but do not mistake our help for mercy," it said. "The galaxy has forgotten you, Earth. You have been left to face the consequences of your own actions. But we will not let you fall without a fight." The words hit like a slap. There was no comfort in them, no promise of salvation. The Xenoth were not here to save humanity in the way the Earth leaders had hoped. No, the Xenoth were here to make a stand, to ensure that humanity would not be destroyed, but they made it clear that Earth's survival would come at a cost. "What do you want from us?" the leader asked again, trying to steady his nerves. "We will fight your enemies, but we do not fight for free," the Xenoth answered. "You will prove yourselves worthy of survival. If you fail, we will leave, and your fate will be sealed. You will be wiped from existence." The tension in the air thickened as the leader processed the Xenoth's words. The message was chilling, but it was clear. Humanity had been given a second chance, albeit a cruel one. The Xenoth were offering their help, but there was no guarantee they would stay. There was no guarantee Earth would survive this trial. The leader swallowed hard, his mind racing. "What do we need to do to prove ourselves?" The Xenoth's eyes glowed brighter as it answered. "You will face your enemies. You will fight alongside us, and you will show us that you are worthy of survival. We do not waste our power on those who cannot stand their ground." The figure turned and motioned to the horizon, where the rest of the Xenoth fleet was still stationed above. "We will bring your enemies to you. You must fight. You must show strength. The choice is yours. Prove you deserve to live, or face annihilation." With that, the Xenoth figure began to move back toward the ship. There was no sign of emotion on its face, no warmth, just the cold certainty of its mission. As it entered the ship, the doors closed behind it, and the massive craft lifted back into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. The crowd stood still, trying to process what had just happened. The Xenoth had not come to offer aid out of kindness. They had come to test humanity. Earth had to fight, and it had to prove its worth. The leader of Earth's government, standing at the forefront, knew that the coming days would shape the future of the planet. Humanity's survival was no longer in their hands alone. It was in the hands of the Xenoth. And the clock was ticking. There was no time for hesitation, no time for second-guessing. Humanity had been given a chance, and now it had to prove that it deserved to keep its place in the galaxy. As the Xenoth ships moved into position, Earth's military began to prepare for the fight of its life. Ships were readied, weapons were armed, and every available resource was pulled together for the coming battle. Earth had no choice but to answer the Xenoth's call. If they failed, the galaxy would never forget the fall of Earth. The battle was coming, and it would be one like no other. The fate of humanity rested on their ability to stand and fight, on their ability to prove that they belonged among the stars. The time for mercy had passed. What remained now was a brutal test of survival. And in the silence that followed, humanity waited, knowing that whatever happened next, the future would never be the same again. The days following the Xenoth's declaration passed in a strange mix of tension and urgency. The weight of what they had said loomed over Earth like a dark cloud. The leaders of Earth scrambled to gather support from every corner of the planet. There was no longer any time to waste. Governments, military forces, and even civilians all united under a single banner: survival. The global atmosphere shifted from confusion and fear to something far more primal. People who had once been divided by borders, ideologies, and petty conflicts now found common ground. Humanity had always been a fractured species, but the arrival of the Xenoth forced them to set aside their differences. This was no longer about politics or wealth. It was about existence. Every nation now stood together, united in a fight for their very survival. In the midst of this growing unity, Earth's military began to mobilize at an unprecedented scale. Soldiers from all walks of life, from every corner of the planet, were trained and prepared for war. The Earth fleet, previously made up of small ships and limited resources, was quickly reinforced. Weaponry was upgraded, strategies devised, and technologies developed with a single purpose: to prove humanity's worth. Yet, as the preparations unfolded, a lingering sense of uncertainty remained. What kind of enemy were they truly facing? What exactly had the Xenoth meant when they said Earth would have to prove itself? No one knew. But one thing was certain: Earth would not face this threat alone. The Xenoth had promised their help, and their ships hovered above, watching over the planet like silent guardians. But there was no guarantee that they would fight with humanity. They had only offered their aid if humanity showed strength. Failure was not an option. The world's leaders had little choice but to trust in the Xenoth, even though the true extent of their involvement remained unclear. Would the Xenoth truly stand by humanity in the coming battle, or were they simply waiting for Earth to falter? The possibility of betrayal hung in the air, but there was no time to question it. The time for doubts was over. Earth had to fight, and fast. Meanwhile, the Xenoth's ships remained ominously silent, their presence a constant reminder of the stakes. From Earth's perspective, they were both allies and unknown threats. No one knew if the Xenoth were monitoring humanity's every move, testing their resolve, or preparing to strike if they were displeased. Every action taken by Earth's military, every decision made by the governments, was scrutinized by unseen eyes. Every soldier who boarded a ship or manned a weapon felt the weight of those eyes upon them, wondering if their efforts would be enough. As Earth's forces readied themselves for war, an eerie calm descended over the planet. The public had been briefed on the urgency of the situation, and while fear still lingered, hope began to surface. For the first time in history, humans were united not by shared ideology or national pride, but by the knowledge that their survival depended on each other. On the front lines, soldiers trained day and night. They learned to adapt, to fight alongside the Xenoth's technology and weaponry, knowing that their very survival depended on it. The military leaders, knowing that the Xenoth's judgment could come at any moment, emphasized unity, discipline, and strength. They had no choice but to push forward, despite the overwhelming odds. As the Xenoth fleet hovered above, Earth's defenders anxiously awaited the arrival of their enemies. But who were these enemies? What threat had the Xenoth warned them about? No one knew, but the anxiety was building. The air was thick with anticipation. What would Earth face in the coming battle? Would the Xenoth truly provide the support they promised, or would they abandon humanity to its fate? Then, without warning, the first of the enemy ships appeared. The sky darkened as massive, sleek vessels emerged from the depths of space. Unlike the Xenoth, these ships did not hover in silence. They came with a thunderous roar, their engines releasing blasts of energy that vibrated through the atmosphere. The ships were enormous, far larger than any human-made vessel, and they moved in perfect synchronization, as though they were a single entity. The enemy fleet was unlike anything Earth had ever seen. They were an aggressive, seemingly unstoppable force, bearing down on Earth with terrifying speed. The ships were dark, their surfaces glistening with an almost liquid-like sheen. As they approached, the atmosphere seemed to warp and twist, as if the very air was being consumed by their presence. Earth's military commanders immediately gave the order to prepare for battle. The fleet, now united and ready, began to launch their own ships into the sky, meeting the incoming enemy head-on. The air was filled with the roar of engines, the hiss of weaponry charging up, and the tense silence of soldiers ready for war. But as Earth's ships prepared to launch, something unexpected happened. The Xenoth fleet, which had remained still and quiet for so long, began to move. Slowly, steadily, the Xenoth ships descended from orbit, positioning themselves alongside Earth's own fleet. The Xenoth had kept their word. They were here to fight. The battle began. The first exchange of fire was unlike anything humanity had ever experienced. The enemy ships unleashed waves of energy blasts that collided with Earth's defenses, sending shockwaves through the atmosphere. Earth's ships retaliated with missiles and lasers, but the enemy was relentless, pushing forward with an overwhelming force. The Exynoth ships were not far behind, their weapons firing in perfect harmony with Earth's. Together, they created a wall of energy and destruction that shattered the sky. But the enemy's fleet was vast, and the battle raged on. Despite the overwhelming odds, Earth's forces fought with everything they had. Soldiers who had never seen combat before now found themselves in the heart of a war that would determine their survival. The fear they had felt just days before had turned into determination. They were no longer just defending their home. They were fighting for their right to exist. As the battle continued, the Exynoth's true power began to show. Their ships were formidable, their technology far beyond anything Earth could have hoped to develop. But it was their strength, their sheer presence, that made the difference. The Exynoth fought with cold precision, never wavering, never faltering. Humanity's forces, bolstered by the Exynoth, held their ground. The battle was fierce, but as the days passed, Earth's soldiers began to gain ground. The enemy's fleet, once a seemingly unstoppable force, began to falter under the combined strength of Earth and the Exynoth. For the first time since the Exynoth's arrival, there was hope. But the battle was far from over. The enemy had not yet shown their full strength, and even though Earth had proved itself capable of standing alongside the Exynoth, the war was just beginning. As the battle raged on, Earth's leaders knew one thing for certain. Their survival would depend not only on their strength, but also on their ability to trust in the Exynoth and their mysterious, terrifying power. Only time would tell if Earth could prove itself worthy of the galaxy's mercy, or if it would be consumed by the forces that threatened to destroy it. The future of humanity hung in the balance, and the universe itself was watching. The battle had raged for days now, and the sky above Earth had become an unrecognizable swirl of fire, debris, and devastation. The once calm atmosphere now reverberated with the sounds of endless combat. Lasers fired, explosions echoed, and the air was thick with smoke and the remnants of shattered ships. Both Earth's and the Exynoth's forces had pushed back the enemy somewhat, but they had not been able to deal the decisive blow they so desperately needed. Humanity had proven its resilience in the face of an overwhelming force. But as the battle carried on, it became clear that there was something darker and more insidious at play. The enemy, though vast in number, had not shown their full hand. It wasn't just about numbers or power anymore. The war had become a test of endurance, and the human spirit was being pushed to its very limits. In the depths of the war room, Earth's military leaders convened to strategize the next phase of the battle. The Exynoth had been invaluable allies, but their involvement was still shrouded in mystery. Despite their overwhelming technological advantage and cold precision in battle, they had not shared much about their tactics or their long-term goals. Were they truly fighting for humanity's survival, or was their involvement simply a way to achieve their own interests? There was no time for hesitation now. Earth had to act, quickly, decisively, and with everything they had. "We can't keep defending forever," General Martinez said, his voice grim. His gaze was fixed on the holographic map showing the enemy fleet's movements. "We need to hit them hard. We've taken their initial assault, but we need to strike back now while they're still regrouping." Another voice echoed through the room, this one belonging to Commander HFY. "We've tried everything we can. The Exynoth's technology is superior, but they don't seem to be taking as much damage as we hoped. We've lost too many ships, too many soldiers." "I'm not suggesting we give up," Martins replied, his eyes narrowing. "But we have to acknowledge the reality of the situation. These enemy ships are built for war. They're relentless, and our fleets are taking heavy losses. If we don't find a way to break their lines, we'll be wiped out before we even get close to a victory." Patel nodded, rubbing her temples. "You're right. But what do we do? What do we have left?" It was in that moment of uncertainty that the calm voice of Ambassador Ryan, the Exynoth envoy, cut through the tension. "There is one final solution," she said, her voice unwavering. She stepped forward, revealing a holographic map of the battlefield. Our ships have been observing the enemy's patterns. There is a weakness, though it is hidden beneath layers of deception. The room went silent. Everyone looked to Ryan, waiting for her to explain. We've been reluctant to use this weapon, Ryan continued, because of the potential consequences. But if we strike at the enemy's central command ship, right here, in the heart of their fleet, we can disorient and potentially destroy the core of their operations. This will give you the upper hand, but it's a dangerous move. Are you certain? Martins asked. What's the catch? Why haven't you told us about this sooner? Ryan's eyes narrowed slightly. The weapon we propose is powerful, but it is not without consequences. If we use it, the battle will be over, one way or another. You will either cripple their fleet completely or bring down an overwhelming force that could crush your forces as well. A chill ran through the room. Every person present understood the gravity of the situation. They could not afford another mistake, and they could not afford to lose more soldiers. Yet the idea of ending the war with one final strike, no matter the cost, was both a beacon of hope and a terrifying prospect. We don't have time to hesitate, Martins said, his voice cold and determined. If this is the only way to stop them, then we take it. The decision was made. Earth would launch a full-scale assault on the enemy's central command ship with the hope that the Xenoth's weapon would deliver the decisive blow. However, the risks were immense. The central ship was heavily protected, surrounded by layers of smaller vessels that would make any direct assault nearly impossible. But Earth had no choice. The mission was clear. They had to strike now. As the plan was set into motion, every available soldier and every ship on Earth's side prepared for what could be their final battle. The atmosphere was electric with a mix of fear, excitement, and a shared sense of resolve. It was as though the very air itself had become a battlefield. The time had come. The fleets, both human and Xenoth, moved into position. Earth's ships began to power up, their weapons primed, their engines roaring with a deafening fury. The Xenoth ships moved alongside, their cold, calculated precision adding to the intensity of the moment. "Ready, Commander," a voice crackled over the comms, and Paddle nodded, her face set with a grim determination. "All forces, fire on my mark. Everyone, make this count." The battle that followed was nothing short of chaotic. The air was filled with blinding flashes of energy as weapons collided with enemy ships, shaking the very fabric of space. The central command ship loomed large ahead, its massive form unyielding as waves of enemy fire washed over it. But Earth's forces pushed forward, undeterred. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon was focused on one singular goal: the heart of the enemy fleet. It was the Xenoth ships that made the difference. As Earth's forces charged, the Xenoth launched a devastating barrage of energy blasts that tore through the enemy's outer defenses. The shockwaves rippled through the enemy fleet, creating gaps that Earth's forces quickly exploited. And then, just as it seemed the battle was turning in favor of Earth, the unimaginable happened. A new wave of enemy ships arrived, even larger and more terrifying than anything Earth had faced before. These new vessels were unlike anything seen in the first assault. Gleaming black, their forms seemingly alive, shifting with an eerie intelligence. "Commander, we're facing an entirely new wave," one of the officers reported, panic evident in their voice. "These ships, they're not like anything we've ever seen." The enemy had brought reinforcements, and with them, a new level of destruction. But Earth's resolve did not waver. As the Xenoth's power surged, Earth's forces found themselves facing an even more deadly foe, one that would test them all like never before. The fate of humanity hung in the balance, and only time would tell if they had enough strength to survive. This new phase of the war had begun, and it was more dangerous than anything Earth had ever imagined. Would they find a way to defeat the enemy, or would the forces of darkness finally consume them all? The final reckoning had arrived. As the battle raged on, the tide shifted once again. The newly arrived enemy ships, dark and almost alive, loomed over Earth's remaining forces. Their black hulls seemed to absorb the light of the stars, making them appear as shadows that devoured everything in their path. The sight of these monstrous vessels sent a wave of fear through Earth's ranks, but it also solidified their resolve. Humanity had been tested before and always managed to stand tall. Now, they would have to do it again. In the war room back on Earth, General Martinez stood before the holographic map, his eyes fixed on the new threat. "We've never seen anything like this before," he muttered, "but we can't back down now. We need to hold them off at all costs." Commander Patel was at his side, her gaze scanning the map. The new enemy ships were unlike anything humanity had ever faced. They were powerful, fast, and seemingly designed to counter every tactic Earth had developed. Their weaponry was unmatched, and their shields were impenetrable. Yet, as impossible as it seemed, humanity could not afford to lose this war. They had come too far to let it slip away. "What are our options?" Patil asked, her voice steady but filled with the weight of the situation. Martinez looked up, his expression hardening. "We push forward. We have one shot at this. If we can get our forces close enough, we might be able to exploit a weakness." A young officer at the communication station interrupted. "General, we've just received a transmission from the Xenith fleet. They've launched their final weapon." The room fell silent. The Xenith, known for their calculating nature and powerful technology, had kept their true capabilities hidden. This final weapon was a mystery, but if they had chosen this moment to use it, it could be the only chance Earth had left. "Patch it through," Martinez ordered, his voice firm. The screen flickered to life, revealing Ryan, the Xenith envoy. Her expression was grave, the light from her ship's consoles casting shadows on her face. "General, Commander, we've done everything we can to support you. Now it's time for you to make your final move. The weapon we've launched will destabilize the enemy's core, but only for a short time. You must strike now, before it is too late." The weight of her words hit the room like a ton of bricks. Earth's forces had one last chance, and it was up to them to seize it. "Understood," Martinez said, his voice steady. "Prepare the fleet. Everyone, move out. We hit them with everything we've got." As Earth's fleet began to mobilize, the atmosphere was thick with anticipation. Every soldier, every pilot, and every officer knew what was at stake. This was it, the final push to win or lose the war. Meanwhile, above the planet, the battle was in full force. The new enemy ships were closing in, their weapons firing with relentless precision. The blasts rocked Earth's forces, but they pressed on, moving closer to the heart of the enemy fleet. The Xenith ships, sleek and deadly, moved in formation, covering Earth's ships as they made their way toward the core of the enemy's defenses. Then, as if the universe itself had held its breath, the Xenith's final weapon activated. A wave of energy, pure and concentrated, surged through space. The enemy fleet shuddered, their shields flickering, their ships groaning as the energy wave passed through them. For a moment, there was silence. A brief, fragile moment where Earth's forces could take advantage of the opening. General Martinez's voice cut through the chaos. "Now, attack." The fleet moved as one, every ship aligning for the final assault. Earth's forces fired everything they had, missiles, lasers, and every weapon at their disposal. The dark enemy ships tried to regroup, but the Xenith's weapon had done its job. Their shields faltered, their hulls cracked under the pressure of the onslaught. For the first time in the battle, Earth's forces had the upper hand. But it wasn't over yet. The enemy commanders, in their desperation, pushed the fleet to its limits. A new wave of reinforcements poured in, more of the same terrifying dark ships, and the battle continued, relentless and unforgiving. Inside the chaos, Commander Patel led her ship into the heart of the fray. "Keep pushing forward. We're not stopping until we break them." Her crew followed her lead, their determination unmatched. Earth had endured too much to back down now. The galaxy had underestimated them, thought they were weak, but now they saw what humanity was truly capable of. With every weapon fired and every shield raised, Earth's forces pressed forward. The enemy, now on the defensive, struggled to maintain control of their fleet. It was clear Earth was fighting for its survival, and nothing would stop them. As the last of the dark enemy ships fell, Earth's forces held their ground. The battlefield was littered with debris, the wreckage of both sides floating in the cold expanse of space. The war was not over yet, but the tide had turned. Humanity had struck back, and the galaxy would never forget it. Martinez watched as the last of the enemy ships exploded in a burst of light. The battle was won, but the cost had been immense. The scars of this war would be felt for generations to come. Yet there was one truth that could no longer be denied. Humanity was not to be underestimated. And as the stars above Earth settled into silence once again, the galaxy knew this: if humanity had been pushed too far, there was nothing they couldn't overcome. The war was far from over, but for now, Earth had won.